the same sentiment. I made it into a magnet, and it has been on her fridge ever since. Now the Kleenexes. Okay. My mom lived with us for 5 months during the shutdown of COVID. In '93, she wanted to help me in the kitchen. She volunteered to wash dishes. She thrived when she was living with us and developed a very special bond with her grandson, John. He was also living at home at the time, and he would take her on walks in the neighborhood. We live in the middle of a hill, and she was able to walk up and down the hills over time. And they would admire everybody's gardens. I loved having her with us. It was an honor and privilege that I will forever be grateful for. She was a sweet, kind, warm, and welcoming person. One of her friends called her a saint. She will be missed by all, but her memory will live on in all of us forever. I love you so much, Mom. I will miss you. Your memory is a blessing.
I'd like to call Putmeyer.
My mom had many friends. She was my mother, but she was also my friend. Her longest lasting friendship was 96 years with Janice Stuhl Newman, who lived next door to the Boxers on Irving Street. They played together as infants, and they went to school together and always stayed in touch, even though Janice moved to California. Janice's heart was broken when she heard of Florrie's passing. Florrie was spiritual and believed in making the world a better place for everyone. Monthly, she would donate to numerous charities, writing around 25 checks, each one for $10. I told her, Mom, $10 is not going to do anything. The solicitation cost $10. And she replied, well, if everybody gave $10, they'd be doing pretty good. I said, Mom, it just doesn't work that way. So we increased her giving without telling her. She said it was her most important work. Marcia took over writing the checks, and Florrie would inquire every month, did you send the checks to my people? In October of 2021, she got COVID-19 and was hospitalized. I visited her in the hospital, and she told me the place was horrible. And so I'm going, what's the matter, Mom? At the time, they wouldn't let people in. You had to get in a gown and everything, and they would let one person in for the day for 1 hour. And she told me a story. She said, well, last night they had a funeral here, and everybody was fighting and screaming over the division of property. And she said, I saw my friend Raya here. And I'm going, Mom, you were dreaming. She goes, I was there, I know. So the next day I went, and she repeated the story. And the next day she repeated the story. And then she was sent to a rehabilitation center in the evening. And there were 2 beds in the rehabilitation center, and she was the only one in the room. The following morning, a new patient was brought in, and it was her friend Raya. And Raya's husband died the following day. Her brain never really fully recovered after the rehab, and we moved her to assisted living. Over her lifetime, Mom would often become dehydrated. She would receive infusions of saline to rehydrate. The results were miraculous, and she was new again. She was having trouble swallowing because the flap on her trachea didn't function anymore. Food and liquids would end up going to her lungs, and she would aspirate, but she would cough and bring it up. And so it was very difficult for her to eat. It's not that she didn't want to eat, she couldn't. She was losing weight, and on her birthday, after 3 parties and a lot of cake, she weighed only 75 pounds. The eating disorder continued, and she lost more weight. She became dehydrated and would sleep and not eat or eat a little. We would get her an infusion, and her appetite would return, only it was temporary. She lived a life she lived a life, and she had the will to live. She wanted to live to be 99 like her sister Goldie. And I wanted her to live that long. Did everything I could do to prolong her life as she wanted. Mom so on her second to the last infusion, before it happened, she was sleeping. And my brother came over to fix her feet. She slept through it. Marcia took her to the dentist to get her teeth cleaned. She slept through it. She had an infusion that day, and 3 hours later at the home, it was happy hour. And she got up and went. Her last infusion was a week ago Sunday, and she was kind of confused. And she had said that she had seen her brother Stanley, and that Stanley came, but she was mad because he wouldn't come in the room. Well, Stanley's living in Ohio. I said, Mom, Stanley's living in Ohio with Mara Kay, his daughter. And so Mara Kay wrote to her sister Lise that day that Stanley had a dream about Florrie. So Tuesday morning about 3 a.m., I got a call from the home that she fell on the floor. And they wanted to know if I want her picked up or if I want her taken to the hospital. And I said, pick her up and put her back in bed. The next morning they called and said she was in a lot of pain, complaining, wouldn't get out of bed, and wouldn't move. So they took her to the hospital, and it turned out she broke her hip. She had fallen many times and never broke a bone. But this time, it was the last time. Surgery, the orthopod called me and said, we're going to operate on your mom tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock. I said, well, don't you have to ask me? He goes, well, yeah. And he goes, well, I'm going to come down and see her. So he picked up the blanket and took one look at her and said, you're right. We can't do it. So at that point, hospice accepted her, and the family was with her in her last days. It was peaceful, and she opened her eyes at one point. Everyone was in the room. Unfortunately, the warranty had expired. The candle was burning out, but her light shines on all of us. And it's in our hearts and in our minds forever. I know that Aunt Goldie and Natalie were first to greet her in her new home because they waited in line. At this point, I would like to thank Marcia. My mother felt like Marcia was a daughter. She took very good care of her. She took her to all the doctor's appointments, managed her medicine, wrote her checks, and did a lot. It's really appreciated. Cheryl, we also appreciate you. Cheryl Rainey took care of my mom on almost a daily basis. She met my mother because she used to give Goldie massages. She started giving my mother massages. And then she said she would take care of her, and she did. She did a wonderful job. And then there's Judy Marcus. Judy, thank you for everything you did. Judy would come on Saturdays to be with my mother. Also, there was a speech therapist, Katie Draper. And Katie sat with my mother at meals and did everything she could to see if they could get my mother to eat. She didn't want pureed food. So they created a special menu for her at the home that she could tell the chef what she wanted and they would make it for her. But unfortunately, it was too late. I miss you, Mother. I love you. And I'm glad we're all here to celebrate your life.
I'd like to call all of Florrie's grandchildren to come on up, and Amanda's going to speak on their behalf.
Hi, I'm Amanda. I'm one of Florrie's grandchildren. It's hard to put everything our grandmother was into a few words. She was an amazing person and I loved her so much. Although she was one of the best cooks I've ever known, as my mom said, she wanted to be remembered for more than her amazing food. Florrie was just the sweetest lady you've ever met. And I personally have so many happy memories of my grandma, but I'm going to keep this short and sweet, just like her, because otherwise I could go on and on and on. Growing up, my grandma hosted every big holiday in our family. And I think this might be one of the reasons that I also love to host and throw parties. We spent a ton of time at her house. I remember sitting with all of my cousins here behind me in one of the basement rooms that had a real rotary phone. And I had never seen one before because I'm not as old as you. And she always had all sorts of toys and like fun things and cool special things in the basement, like a water fountain. And it was always such an adventure to be in the basement. And when I think of her house, I also think of her cooking and hosting. As my mom and I have such similar speeches, it's kind of funny. Looking back, I remember her delicious matzo ball soup and her other scrumptious treats. Us grandkids, or at least my brother and I, always thought it was weird that she ate chicken feet for gazee, but apparently it was delicious. I also never tried it. As my mom described, she always had trays and trays of desserts, and I remember getting to arrange the trays, and this made me feel so grown up and special because it was when I was like 7 or 8. And I think this is why I have a sweet tooth, because when you're arranging 10 different desserts on a tray, it makes you want to sample them, obviously. But only when it was time to have dessert. I didn't steal it like some other people that were mentioned. I remember for Hanukkah, she would make homemade sugar cookies with like cookie cutter molds and we would decorate them. And I remember thinking that was so fun and special. I really hope that I can take some of those traditions I remember and put them into my household for my future kids. I got my love of clothes and shopping from my grandma. When she would take care of me when I was young, we would go to the mall together and that was super fun. However, my grandma always made sure to get her shopping done first before I got to do my shopping. She was a big sale shopper and taught me how to look for a deal, but my mom also had a big hand in this as well. And Florrie always had a closet full of clothes, as does my mom, as do I. But when she decided to move to independent living facility, as my mom talked about. There was one place that she poo-pooed because the closet was too small. And I can see myself doing that in the future as well. She cared about always looking her best. And for example, she had her nails and hair done weekly. Florrie loved getting dolled up, and that's something I really like too. I have my nails done. One of my favorite memories I have of my grandma was going to the movies. When we were young, she would take us to the movies when we would stay with her. And I remember her having so many snacks for us because, as my mom said, she was the hostess with the mostest. Like she had butterscotch candies. I also remember she would pop the popcorn at home and put it in little sandwich bags. So we would each get our own popcorn bag and we wouldn't have to share. And also, I'm sure it saved money. As we got older, movies were an activity we would often do as a family. I remember many Sunday matinees spent with Grandma Florrie, always seeing the latest movies in theaters. As I've gotten older, my grandma always told me to take my time, whether that be getting married or having kids. She would tell me I have all this time. This advice meant a lot to me because we often feel like there's not enough time and we need to always do things as soon as we can. And even though I got 31 years with my grandmother, it still doesn't really feel like enough. Grandma Florrie was a really special lady. She meant the world to me and all of us, and we were so lucky and blessed to have her as a grandmother. She will always hold a place in our hearts, and I'm so grateful for the memories I have and the close relationship I shared with her.
In just a moment, we're going to have, I just want to thank Amanda for reminding me how old I am because I remember the rotary. We'll have the beautiful mitzvah called Chesed Shel Emet. Everything. Devin, did you want to say? Chesed was what I heard about, taking care of other people. And we have the job to help to fill in her grave. And my dad taught me to put the first shovelful in upside down. You can do it however you like. But don't pass the shovel to the next person because we'd rather do it slower. So just put it back in the earth if you can. So I'm going to ask you to please rise as we lower her coffin. We're also going to do Kriya, the act of tearing now, for her 3 children. The last 2 words are Diane and then the right judge. We don't get to yes, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Dayan HaEmet. You say Adonai Natan God gives. Yeshov Afar Keshahaya. And the dust returns to the earth as it was. Glory, rest in peace. After the family, I ask you all to please help and participate. Thank you. It's a beautiful prayer we say at this time as we are filling in. It's called Siduk Hadim. And it talks about the temporary nature of our lives, but our souls are forever. And Myron, I really appreciate you giving us so much insight into her last few days and weeks. Ben Sira said, "We are all destined to die. We share it with all who ever lived, for all who will ever be. Cry for the dead. Do not hide your grief. Do not restrain your mourning, but remember that continuing sorrow is worse than death. We let the dead rest, but their memory is a source of peace. As a drop of water in the sea, as a grain of sand on the shore, are our few days in eternity. The good things in life last for a short time, or for a long time in Flora's case. But a Shem Tov, a good name, lasts forever." Please, everyone, you can come from either side here if you can take one of these shovels if you like. Help them put in there. I'd like to announce that the family will be greeting visitors this afternoon at the community room at Park Mayfair. I believe that Belden might have the location. It's on Eudora Street in Denver. Following services until 7 p.m. this evening. 955 Eudora. At the party room.
I'm Sue Fine Silver. Good, how are you? Good to see you.
I did recognize.
Said she was at the Kirkin.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Larry, do you think you'll drop it?
Careful.
Oh, yeah. 5:30, that's fine. Just to mention, at 5:30, there will be a minyan, a prayer service. And we'll give the family a chance to say Kaddish again. Larry is going to lead that minyan. And we have some really nice prayer books that are in English and in Hebrew. And I know the family would love your presence there.
She just keeps saying, "Oh, she does." Now she loves her mom, and she knows she just far. So glad she did. It was so nice to see. She needs. Yeah. Right. Right. She'll cry. And people will come from where is that's what Colorado. Okay. Yeah. By Zadie. By Zadie. That's the one, right? So I told her. Go back. Yeah. Are you going over to this? I think so. So maybe I'll see you. Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah. Are you sure? Yeah. Do you need a hand? Yeah, I think. It's just not loving. Yeah. Everybody wants.
I'd like to ask everyone to come together for a moment. I think there's still some few people that want to fill in. We're going to do the El Malei Rachamim, the memorial prayer, in which you will hear Florie's beautiful name. Her Hebrew name is Tzipora. Tzipora is a bird. It means a lot to me because I'm a birder, and there's a new app on your phone. It's called Bird Call. And you listen to the bird, and it tells you what bird it is. And I love that the Hebrew name for bird is Tzipora. So now we're going to do the memorial prayer. Male Rachamim, Shochem Bameromim, Hametzeh Menucha Nechona, Tacha Kanefei Ashechina, B'mahalot Kedoshim U'Diorim, Kezor Arakim Azeirim, Et Nishmat Tzipora Bat Ze'ev Wolf Ve'Udel שהלכה לעולמה בגן עדן, אוי בגן עדן, תהי מנוחתה, אנא בעל הרחמים, הסתירה בסתר גנבך לעולמים, וצרור כצרור החיים את נשמתה, אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום על משכבה. Then Omar together. Amen. El Malei Rachamim, exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Florence Melnick, Sipora, the daughter of Ze'ev, Wolf, and Udo, who has gone to her eternal home. O merciful God, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul, her neshama, be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace, and let us say. Amen. The Kaddish, the mourner's Kaddish, was first called the Rabbanan Kaddish, the Rabbi's Kaddish, and it was just to praise God. So at this time, we praise God for the life of Florence Melnick and the lives of her children, her grandchildren, and all of you, her wonderful friends. We'll say the Kaddish together. Yitgadal, Yitgadash, Meraba, Amen. Ve'alma dibra chilute, ve'amlich malchute, ve'chayechon, yomechon, chayeh techo bet Yisrael. Ba'agala uzman kariv imru amen. Yehi shmei rabam bevarach le'alam u'ameh amaya. Yitbarach ve'yishtabach ve'yitba'ar ve'yitromam ve'yitnaseh. Yithadar ve'yitaleh ve'yitalal. Shemei kudesha berichu. Le'ela min kol birchata ve'shirata. Tushbechata ve'nechamata. Da'amiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehi shama rabba min shmaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Yoseh shalom v'imroma u'yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. We have a beautiful tradition in Judaism. It's called a shura, and it's a line with people facing each other, where we escort the family to let them know they are not alone in their grief, that we are here for them to support them. And it's just a sweet way for them to leave the cemetery. So I'd like to ask everyone to come on over here where Jim Cohen is, and we're going to say these words of comfort as the family goes out through the line. You can say them after me, these beautiful words. Hamakom yanachem etchem betoch she'ar. Yes, please. Avelei Sion v'Yerushalayim. May you be comforted amongst all the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. Thank you so much for being here, everyone.
If you need information about shit, I do have that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Over. I will never not.